Okay, welcome everybody to the Town of Richmond Water and Sewer Commission meeting, July 7th, 2025. Public comments?
I would like to comment that I hope everybody in town will say a prayer that July 10th is free of flooding.
Yes. Okay. A moment of meditation. Breathe.
Have it on the board already, underlined, underlined, underlined.
Any additions, deletions, or modifications to the agenda? Yes. Moving right along, approval of minutes from our last meeting.
Morgan, this is David. I move to approve the minutes of the last meeting.
This is Aaron. I'll second.
Any discussion? No discussion. Moving for a vote to approve the minutes.
This is Aaron. I.
David, I.
Morgan, aye. Motion passes. Next up, we have, is it 4 purchase orders, I believe?
Mm-hmm.
So,
Morgan, this is David. I move to approve purchase order 5195 to Simple Route for the fiscal year 26 IT services in an amount not to exceed $4,158.
This is Aaron. I'll second.
discussion. Just quick comment. This is our portion of the full bill, so the actual purchase order is bigger than that.
We have to split this, but yeah, we have to split this between water and, do we have to split it with wastewater and water?
Yeah, we will do that.
70-30.
Yeah, it's a 7/30 split, but that's just on the PO, but the full water and sewer amount is 4158.
Okay, calling for a vote on purchase order number 5195.
Aaron. I.
David, I.
Jane, aye.
Morgan, aye. Motion passes.
Morgan, this is David. I move to approve purchase order 5319 to various chemical suppliers for sodium aluminate wastewater chemical in the amount of $17,510.
This is Aaron. I'll second that movement.
Discussion? No discussion. Calling for a vote for purchase order 5319.
Aaron. I.
David, I.
Jane, aye.
Morgan, aye. Motion passes. Next up,
Morgan, this is David. I move to approve purchase order 5320 to Chittenden Solid Waste District for the shipment and disposal of dewatered sludge in an amount not to exceed $140,000.
This is Aaron. I'll second.
discussion?
This was, I reduced this from last year by 10 grand and it actually looks like we're gonna be about 50,000 under for last year. I want to make sure we stay that way next year. If we do, I think I can cut it by another 10 grand.
Is this the new press?
Because of the press. Yep.
Getting less water out? I mean, getting
Yeah.
more water out.
Yeah, getting more water out, putting more solids in a trailer for less tonnage.
Right. And the fees for that, were they fixed for 2 years?
Yeah, I think we're locked in. We're gonna have a discussion about that coming up and probably at the next meeting.
Okay.
There's some changes coming.
Okay, great. All right. No further discussion?
Aaron. I.
David, I.
Jane, aye.
Morgan, aye. Motion passes. Last up.
Morgan, this is David. I move to approve purchase order 5321 to various chemical suppliers for polymers, biosolid chemical in an amount not to exceed $70,000.
This is Aaron. I'll second that motion.
Any discussion?
I kept this one the same, even though we're gonna be under this year probably by close to 10 grand. Again, and just as long as we stay there with our usage, I think I'll drop it next year. I
Right.
didn't this year, wondering what was gonna happen with tariffs and stuff affecting the prices.
Okay, thank you. Okay. No further discussion, calling for a vote on the motion.
Aaron. I.
David, I.
Jane, aye.
And aye, motion passes. All right. Next up, recognition of article about,
Warrants.
I'm sorry.
Yeah,
I didn't
motion
see
for the
warrants.
warrants.
I'm sorry.
Mr. Chairman, I move we approve the warrants as presented.
Okay,
This is David. I'll second.
discussion?
Right?
They were in there.
Okay.
Yeah, they were there.
Yeah, I just want to make sure, because Jay didn't see something from the select board meeting, you're not seeing the warrants. I'm like, what happened on Thursday? But,
Anyway,
okay.
all right, we have a motion, second,
Aaron, I.
David, I.
J.I.
Morgan, I, motion passes.
Okay. Now we're good.
We're all getting older. None of us. are
There
young.
they are. I know, they're there. They were snuck between PO 3 and 4. They were
Okay.
getting older, I am, yes. All right. Next up. Recognition of article about Richmond Water and Resources and the National Public Action Treatment Plant Operator.
I would like to applaud one thing in particular, the very diplomatic way you referenced our previous operator.
Oh,
Yes,
Yes.
I would agree.
professional, right?
Yeah.
No, I think it's great.
I mean, yeah, it was good. I thought it was well written.
Well written. It said a lot of positive things about your operations there. So thank you.
I think it would be nice to put someone smarter than I, make this a link that we could like post to the front porch
There's-
forum so we can
There's a
share
link.
it.
I actually, I found it after. I have a link to the article online,
Okay,
It'd be great.
yeah,
so.
I could do that or someone can, but
Yeah, we
that
could
would
do
be.
that.
I think it'd be great for other people to read it and see too, because it's neat.
That's cool. Yeah.
Says a lot.
Yeah.
Says a lot about how you guys are doing.
Yeah.
So, right. Next up, update on congressionally directed spending requests advancing to next round.
Here we go. So we put in a correct congressionally directed spending request for $4.4 million for septage receiving and treatment. And the Senator Welch's office has advanced it to the next round, which is the U.S. Senate Appropriations Subcommittee on Interior and Environment. But there are still several more steps before it gets funded, but this is a good next step. So it's not dead yet.
Yeah. Kristen, any comments on those? Keep our fingers crossed.
Keep your fingers crossed. I mean, you were allocated, moved forward last year and thought we had secured funding, and then Congress found right down all of this. So it's kind of at the whim of Congress. So it's good news. I mean, you made it this first round. A lot of communities did not. So
It's good.
distributing a lot of money, and I think it's great. I don't know to what extent others of the state had some help with that.
Right, okay. And should we bug their office at all?
Should we bug them? I think it's a little bit out of our hands. We can we'll follow up with them just to, kind of just keep communication, and I think it's probably through Josh.
I assume you get the emails.
So I'll follow up with them every so often. I think it's a little bit out of our hands.
I would guess it's a crystal ball situation that there's no way to know when they would decide. Probably not before we have to.
Goes through committee, right?
You might know before you have to go to bond.
Okay,
You have a large bond for the.
Because it's a 2-year cycle, right?
This would be for next year's budget that would have to go through Congress.
And that starts September the 1st or October the 1st, I think, is their over. Yeah, their budget's starting in either September or
I think it's October.
Mhm.
okay, so we might know. That was my only question about it. Okay,
Yeah, it's October 1st.
Okay, great. All right, thank you. Next up,
do you want to nominate me and then I'll nominate you? Is that what we're
Okay.
doing?
Yeah.
So we have a quorum?
Yes.
Okay,
Well, technically you are recommending,
recommending.
Okay,
because the select board is the actual appointing authority.
Okay.
But you can move to recommend each other, one after another. We can make it 2 motions.
Yeah.
Okay. So I will move to recommend that the select board appoint Morgan Wolver to serve on the Water and Sewer Commission for another term.
I will second that motion.
Great. So with no further discussion, does anyone have any discussion?
Well,
Without any further discussion?
Yeah.
Calling for a vote? Aaron, I.
David, I.
I abstain. All right, thank you. And so I'd like to recommend that Aaron Farr also serve on the commission for another year. Have anybody like to second that?
I'll second that.
Okay. Calling for a vote, Morgan, I.
J.I.
David, I.
Aaron Farr abstains.
Okay, motion passes. I recognize.
Well, I promise you we will give it serious consideration tonight.
Okay, thank you.
But you might want to stick around.
I might. I think I do have some things to tend to at home though, unfortunately. There was AC, I might have stuck around.
Right, moving right along, review of June 2025 water data.
Rock solid again.
I want to say,
Twice in a row?
this is such a great report because it's so boring. It was perfect.
Would you like me to make it not so boring?
No.
Absolutely not. You're doing.
We're very excited that there's nothing to be excited about.
That's right. You should get a raise maybe. I don't know, but
Yeah.
this is good.
I mean. And these are actual numbers like, when they're not rounded, they're not what the state sees. So,
Great. Thank you, Steve. All right. Moving along, review responses to the request from the town plan committee for feedback on the town plan from the Water and Sewer Commission. You want to bring that up? Sure. So,
I thought they looked good.
all right,
I
so
think they were pretty straightforward.
Josh, Steve and I met and reviewed each one, filled them in, responded to what the town was looking for. I'm not sure that there was, I guess they'll respond back to us or,
I think they're just looking for feedback, so I'll send this to the town plan committee and they'll have the feedback from Water and Sewer Commission, so
Mhm.
thank you for doing it.
yeah, thank you, Josh. Right, next up, consideration of approving a vendor for an influent pump.
So one of you want to talk to that?
so we had three quotes come back. Of the three, we did some more extensive. They basically were all within 2,000 of each other. Talking with Kirsten, getting some recommendations we called a couple more operators that had the same pumps in place. We got some really good feedback back from them. And extensive talk with Brad and Mike. We decided to go with the flight pump, which originally was not my choice because of parts. But in talking with operators that have had these pumps in place one operator had them in place for 10 years. And he said he had absolutely had with much bigger flows than we had absolutely no problems with the pumps. And they were simple to clean, which was the issue that Brad and I originally thought that these pumps had. So we ended up, we feel that we would go with the flight. It is submersible. So if the wet well comes into the building down there, the pumps wouldn't be ruined.
And what about the 5-year warranty? Is that something they can issue?
Yeah, the warranty, I've got a letter. They just stuck to what we were asking, but they will warranty it, prorate it.
Right, great, okay, good. Somebody would like to make a motion?
That vendor is pronounced Xylem,
Yes.
so XY makes a Z sound.
Yes.
So Morgan, this is David. I move to approve the purchase of a flight pump from Xylem for $34,344.71 with funding provided by the wastewater capital reserve.
Would you like to second that?
Sure, I'll second.
Any further discussion? Further discussion, please state how you vote on this motion.
Aaron, I.
David, I.
Aye, motion passes. Okay, update from Hoyle Tanner on septage receiving analysis. Okay, you're up.
So. Thank you for having us back to present to you.
Let's say, Steve, you want to move that a little closer? The speaker,
The microphone.
So,
thank you.
John regrettably needed to run home. There was a family emergency. So everything's gonna be okay, but just wanted to let me or have me tell you. So, I'm here from Hoyle, Kirsten DiPietro, warden from Hoyle Tanner. Online, I have Aiden Short from Hoyle Tanner. And we're just going to present quickly our PowerPoint presentation so we can open it up for questions. So if you could hold your questions just to the end, we'll kind of present our analysis pretty quickly for you. Aiden, do you want to share your screen?
Sure. Sec. Can you all see that?
Yes.
Okay.
So you can go ahead to the first.
Okay.
Or the second slide. So I just want to give a quick background. We completed the preliminary engineering report, which is the 20-year evaluation, and submitted that 90% to the state of Vermont in January 29th of 2004. And that report identified critical age-related equipment replacements and hydraulic capacity improvements that need to happen at your plant. Last year, spring, we came to the commission and just gave you an update. And I believe at that meeting, that's when it was identified a need to kind of drill into the septage numbers analysis a little bit more to kind of say like, try to identify like what exactly is septage, how is it impacting our plant and our operations and those costs of our daily operations. So in June, we presented that septage receiving analysis. Sorry I wasn't here, I was on vacation, but I hear Aiden and Amy did a presentation on that. And there was a request for more updates and additional detail on that analysis. So here we are today we have done some additional analysis and we're presenting it to you here, and we've presented a memo to Josh as well. So you can go ahead to the next slide. Just the background on septage receiving. The reason Richmond is accepting so much septage is it's a revenue stream, but the facility is operating at such a low capacity, only 37 historically an average of your permitted capacity, and that allows all this extra organic and hydraulic capacity. And so it's underutilized. The plant was built for accepting that whey waste from the old the cheese plant. So the plant's running so much below capacity that you have this extra. And over the years, Kendall and Steve have been accepting septage to use as a to press it with their sludge as a revenue stream, and that you've been able to do capital improvement projects with that revenue stream. So historically, the second bullet is just it provides a higher revenue than the expenses it incurs, which is resulting in a benefit historically to your town, and Aiden will show you what that is. And that is because it does consume water, it does consume chemical, but those costs are far less than what you get in revenue, that the delta is always in the positive. And why it's been so successful for Richmond is that if you look on the map, it's a little hard to see. You are just outside, you are in Chittenden County, but you're just outside, and it's all of those very dark red towns around you have a real need to have a place to dump their septage. So
geographically, you're right in a perfect spot between the counties that are kind of wrapping around you from the east and north, and then Addison counties, which are down south. So you geographically, you're in the right place, and that's why you are seeing haulers that want to come to your facility. So this is a study, just if you're interested, in 2024, there was a statewide septage kind of management plan that was created by Brown and Caldwell for the state of Vermont. It's on their website. We can provide a link to it. It kind of was just very kind of 50,000 foot view of like, who's accepting septage in the state? I think you had to fill out a questionnaire for them. And it's kind of like saying, we take this much, this many days, and they're trying to see what's the landscape across Vermont. Where is it in the center part of the state, the northwest, the south, the southeast? They're just kind of trying to figure out where does it make sense if there could be some consolidation. So if you are interested, there is a study. We're gonna go into the alternatives, the analysis. And I'm gonna have Aiden run through these because he did the lion's share of crunching the numbers for this analysis. So Aiden, I'm gonna turn it over to you.
Sure. So we'll jump into the first one. So as Kirsten mentioned, historically, there was some benefit to receiving septage. So we were looking at effectively the alternatives for septage receiving for the future plant as part of the planned wastewater treatment facility upgrade project. So we analyzed 4 different alternatives. The first one, which is up on the screen right now, is upgrading the septage receiving facilities. So effectively, this would allow you to receive more septage than you currently do, up to an average of approximately 35,000 gallons per day. And then this correlates to approximately $21.8 million for the wastewater treatment facility upgrade project.
I'm gonna pause you for a second. This is the alternative that's in the 20-year evaluation. Like this is what was included in that evaluation. Sorry.
Yep, that's okay. It's good inclusion. So as part of this upgrade and as part of receiving additional septage, there would be related increases to certain operation and maintenance costs, including electricity, water usage, wastewater and biosolids chemicals, biosolids disposal, biosolids facility repair, and labor. So the second alternative that we looked at we called it maintaining septage receiving facilities. So effectively, this would include replacement of age-related replacement of existing equipment, but the intent of this alternative would be for the plant to continue receiving approximately the same amount of septage that it has in recent years, which is equal to approximately 20,000 gallons per day. This translates to a capital cost of approximately $20.9 million for the upgrade project. It includes eliminating the new rotary press and sludge transfer pumps associated with that first alternative that we listed. And then different from that first alternative, there is less impact on the projected operation and maintenance costs moving forward. There are slight increases to certain factors, including the biosolids chemical and disposal expenses, and then reductions in the biosolids facility repair and labor expenses. The third alternative we looked at would be eliminating the septage receiving facilities. So this translates to a capital cost of $19 million for the planned upgrade project. Would include eliminating new septage receiving unit upgrade, the new rotary press, and the new sludge transfer pumps. I do want to also add that under this alternative, dewatering would continue at the facility of the sludge stream that's received from the influent flows. And then different from the first 2 alternatives, in this scenario, the operation and maintenance impacts would basically be reduction across the board for all of the costs that we listed before. The fourth alternative, which we discussed at the previous sewer commission meeting that we had presented at, is reducing the wastewater treatment facility capacity, which would include forfeiting some of the permitted capacity to basically just the current average daily flow plus a modest amount of growth. And then this would also include eliminating dewatering at the wastewater treatment facility, which would be part of that, reduced plant size. So as a result of eliminating dewatering of the sludge stream at the treatment facility, there would be increased hauling costs. So there is a capital cost of approximately $15.3 million associated with this upgrade project. And as I mentioned before, this would effectively eliminate all of the new septage receiving equipment and the new dewatering facilities upgrade and equipment replacement. And then similar to alternative 3, we do see an O&M reduction almost across the board, with the exception of the biosolids disposal expense, which we mentioned before. By not dewatering, there would be significantly more volume that would need to be disposed of under this scenario. So the results of these 4 alternatives, I should try to scroll down a little bit here, is basically that as you accept less septage, there is less of a net cost benefit for the town. So alternative 1 through 4, basically you're looking at reduced septage being received in each of those alternatives. 3 and 4 are both 0 septage received, but alternative 4 would also include no dewatering on site. So there would be an increased volume of sludge which would need to be hauled. So as you can see, the septage revenue falls off to 0 for both of those 2 scenarios. And then you have a little bit of the opposite relationship, the inverse happening for the expenses. The expenses do decrease through alternatives 1 through 3. And then the capital expenses decrease all the way 1 through 4. The reason that the operation and maintenance expenses are higher in alternative 4 than alternative 3 is that the increase in hauled sludge is so great that actually bumped up the overall expense in that scenario. So this 4th line, the additional revenue required, is effectively reflecting the deficit between the projected expenses and revenues, assuming no changes to sewer rates, the septage rates, beyond inflation-related increases. So an annual inflation rate of 3.5%, which was applied to all of the expenses and the revenues. So then these next 2 black lines are effectively the projected revenues from the hookup fees and interest, as well as the sewer usage, the baseline user rate revenue, without any of those increases. And then this line right here in the dark blue is reflecting the amount of additional revenue that would need to be raised through user rates in order to make up for that deficit. I want to stress that in all of these, there would need to be some increase in user rates to repay the wastewater treatment facility upgrade bond. So as you can see, for all 4 of the alternatives, the amount of increased revenue that would need to be generated does increase from about $572,000 all the way up to about $1.26 million. And then there's a relative percent increase that we show down here. So the user rate increase for alternative 1, which just to reiterate would include increasing the amount of septage received, is about 142%. Maintaining the amount of septage volume received would translate to an increase of about 209%. Eliminating the septage receiving but maintaining dewatering at the facility would correlate to an increase of approximately 286%. And then alternative 4, which would include reducing the size of the treatment facility and eliminating dewatering, would translate to an increase of 314%. And then the very bottom line is comparing the first 3 alternatives to alternative 4, which we sort of looked at as the do nothing alternative or the baseline, basically, the absolute minimum, just to show basically how much revenue would need to be generated, or sorry, not how much revenue, how much the user rates would need to be increased relative to that baseline do nothing alternative. So alternative 1 is about 45% of the increase. Alternative 2 is about 67% of the increase, and alternative 3 is about 91% of the increase. So we came to some pretty definitive conclusions from this analysis. The first one, which is really the overarching conclusion, is that septage receiving generates more revenue than it incurs in expenses, which effectively helps to lower user rates. And that relationship is carried over basically the more septage is received. So the more septage you receive, the more of a net cost benefit you receive. Additionally, comparing alternatives 3 to 4, it became pretty clear that dewatering is critical to minimize disposal and hauling expenses. And incorporating the septage aids in the efficiency of the dewatering process, which is something that I know that Steve and Kirsten have discussed several times. The third one, which I did mention on the last slide, is that user rate increases will be required to bond the project in all 4 alternatives. That's the reality of bonding, a treatment facility upgrade project. It is a capital expense. And then you had previously mentioned in the meeting that the $4.48 million congressionally directed spending grant application is currently under federal review in, I believe, the 2nd stage. And that's specifically tied to septage receiving at the wastewater treatment facility. Right. So we've outlined what we think the next steps are. Sorry, just going to scroll down here. We would like the Sewer Commission's concurrence on the preferred alternative from those 4 options. And following that, we would submit the 100% preliminary engineering report for DEC review, and then contract in advance the step 2 design phase wastewater treatment facility upgrade. And then the 4th step would be to strategize the bond repayment alternatives and the public outreach for the bond vote. And we can take any questions or comments at this point.
Thank you, Aiden.
Mr. Chairman, member of the board, given that the other 3 alternatives, at the end of the day, wind up being more costly for the users and represent diminished capacity, I don't see how anything but alternative 1 really makes sense.
Aiden, can we go back to the chart?
Sure.
So if I understand you correctly, if we went with alternative 1, which is the best scenario, you're telling me that the user rates are gonna increase by 142%?
That is the very baseline projection. So just to make it clear, we didn't get into a full, modeled repayment structure. That's very simply, if no changes are made, how much additional revenue needs to be generated from user rates in the future versus currently or historically. So yes, it is 142% increase to make up for the revenue deficit in scenario 1, alternative 1.
But that rate increase is the least of the 4 alternatives.
It's the least, but
It's also total excluding any grant funding.
it
Excludes any grant funding, and we have not done, Aiden, correct me if I'm wrong, but we haven't looked at alternatives for that bond repayment.
Yes,
And that-
absolutely.
That would be that would definitely be a next step.
Yeah, so that wasn't part of this analysis. We've done that for a couple of other towns. There would be a lot more discussion that would need to go into it, and we would need concurrence on different elements from you. But we could recommend a bond repayment structure. I know that this probably is not necessarily going to be feasible, but other towns will sometimes spread out at least some portion of the cost across the tax base. There's also been discussion of basically an exclusive septage hauling contract for users on septic within Richmond itself. So there are other options, and then different ways that you can sort of utilize your existing wastewater reserves in order to make that a little bit more palatable. So that 142% is very much bare bones, not looking at any of those methods where we can simplify it for you, just very simply how much more revenue needs to be generated relative to what is currently being generated.
So, couple of questions. And this is like off, what you did was awesome. And now I feel like I'm gonna ask you to do more. Where else can we reduce the cost of this project as a whole? Because there's other things part of this, is my understanding correct? Like I still think the number is exceptionally high, and I don't know how we're going to pitch that to the voters. And I just wonder if the other 15 million, with the alternative 4, it brought it to 15 million. Is there something in there that we can, I don't want to say cut in a negative way, but is there something that we can do somewhere else? And
So you have age-related issues.
yeah,
There's equipment that needs to be replaced. Steve and I have already talked about, it could be possible to phase the project such that you are tackling one issue at a time. You're going to not get as favorable of a bid when you go, if you're bidding it in phases. I mean, that's just the reality.
that makes sense.
Having it be one project would be the most cost benefit for the town, but
And I'd
yet
also,
it may not be feasible.
Yeah.
So
and I'd also like to see another, whatever you want to call it, like when we looked at it in January and it was like an 800-page document. And everyone was like, oh, there's plenty of time. We'll look over it later. Like, you don't need to read the whole thing. And now I feel like we're at the point where we need to read the
you
whole
want to read
thing.
the thing.
So I would be interested to see where that document is now.
Yeah, it's still an 800-page document. What I was going to do is take this analysis and append it to the document. The numbers you're seeing now have been, because of that document was done, those prices were from 2023, they are old, so they did get escalated up.
Which is totally fine, but I feel like we kind of
Yeah. And
didn't pick through it, and so I feel like we're not.
And I could sit with Steve to be like, what's the most critical?
So, I want to sit down and revisit the engineering study. I can't, in good faith, support raising rates by 142%. I can't do it. I won't do it. And so we need to come out with a plan to make this more feasible for the town financially. It's nothing I can say. I can't, in good faith, support this, even though we need it. We either have to put it into a phased plan. There's things that I already know we can cut, and there are things that we are already doing that's part of the upgrade. We're take on parts of this and do it ourselves. But just to go to the town and say $19 million, and then your rates are gonna go up.
Right.
So it struck me all along that, and Aaron, this is part of what you were saying. There's two sides of this. Either we reduce the expenses, and that's what you're just talking about. Do we phase them in over time? It seems obvious to me. One scenario is we upgrade the septage receiving, we get accurate charges and contemplate increasing the septage drop-off fees to earn more revenue from the septage. So that's one approach, like to front load septage to start earning money to put in the bank to pay for other things if we're going to phase it. So that's just one thought about the expense side. Another question about the expense side, and I think we as a commission need to know what our guardrails are in setting rates. I'll just say the obvious, like you go to the current users, for those who've been around a while, the last time we did a substantial increase, like the water tank, we had business owners in town meeting with us saying, "You're killing me." And it was nothing like 142%.
Saying that.
Well, so that's what I'm
Yeah.
saying. So I think that to some degree, that dog won't hunt. So just going to the same place and saying the same rate structure. It's obvious, perhaps, if you think about it, that do you try to increase expenses to non-users? One way to do that is through the school or government, because the school gets more taxpayers, including non-Richmond residents. But what's our authority to raise the rates for the school beyond their like a proportionate use? Government, the same thing. And then to go to the taxpayers and say, hey, I got a great plan. How about you help pay the cost of the water treatment plant that you don't personally use? In my straw poll of voters on July 4th, it was about 80% forget it and 20% maybe. So it's possible. Until we ask people to vote on it, we don't really know. So that's all the revenue side. And then in terms of the cost side, I think we also need to know when we say, hey, great deal, we're going to reduce the drop-off fee. I would like to know what the typical septage hauler fee is to the customer. And of that fee, how much is the actual tippage or drop-off fee at our plant? If it's 15 or 20% of the total cost, we're not going to influence the cost to that customer by influencing the 15 or 20% by 5%. I got great news. Your $300 fee is now going to be $295.
And I called a major septic hauler and asked them about that, and they said that is not a thing. They don't do that for any local hauling within.
The town of Montpelier.
Montpelier does it.
I just want to know
Maybe
the
they don't
money.
work in Montpelier.
Is the money like, if it's $5 out of $300, I'm thinking that dog won't hunt either. I just want to know the proportion.
The reason I know it's done in Montpelier is our contract operator lives in Montpelier. And he has his septic tank pumped every 3 years. And I believe he told me it was like 220. Wind River comes, they set a time, they come and pump his tanks. And it's part of every 3 years, he doesn't have to worry about it. And I believe he said he paid 220 or 225.
I don't know how that compares to somebody else's.
I
fee.
just paid $350 2 weeks
I would
ago.
say it was $425 when we did our.
So if it's $150, now we're talking something, right?
Yeah.
That's kind of the point.
Okay.
Yeah, I have my hand up for a bit. The reason I said at the beginning that alternative one is the only one that makes sense is not to say that we should jump in with both feet. It's more that I've heard from a number of people saying, well, what if we didn't do this? What if we didn't do that? What if we didn't do this? And what we're seeing here is all those what ifs, the ones that are in the document, aren't the miracle workers that people seem to think they are.
So that's where I need to sit down with Kirsten.
Right.
And we need to prioritize some things. So the influent pumps are major. They need to be upgraded.
Absolutely.
And we wouldn't be in this position if 20 years ago they had been upgraded.
Mhm.
You know, we're dealing with stuff not 20 years old, 50 years old.
Right.
And
Yeah,
that's
so-
why
yeah.
it's a necessity at this point.
Right.
The grit screening, I'm taking that right off the table, I'll tell you right now, I'm not. We cured that with a $400. Answer, in my eyes, it's working. Is it great? Not particularly, but it works.
Mhm.
The next thing, the grit screen and headworks. We have to do something. That unit is worn out. So that's a necessity. The aeration there. With the compressed gas, which is not really a gas, it's air. To mixing, for the digester, the aeration tanks, that upgrade, yes. It's a new thing, it's out. It's gonna replace the old system. What I've read about it, what I've researched about it, I think it's gonna be better than what we have.
But
We-
that is one that you could do later, you know?
We could do it later.
But to your point, we definitely need to, as you said, you need to sit down with the engineers and go over all these things and say, well, what if? These what ifs aren't making the world a difference, but a lot of the things you've talked about. would.
Correct.
So we are not ready to make a decision because we don't know what you're gonna work out.
Well, I like Bart's idea of prioritizing septage and using the septage money towards some of these other upgrades.
Mhm.
And phasing things in. I need to have discussion with Kirsten also about the, effluent pumping station. That is a necessity. But can we get some of that paid for by FEMA
Yes.
because it's flood mitigation? So that project we could,
So we can
Hey.
like, so we can kind of dissect it, you know, anything that's related to septage, which is actually a large portion. It's the holding tanks, it's the aeration systems for those holding tanks, it's all the pumping, the conveyance between those tanks to the dewatering unit. It's the receiving unit, it's the architectural work that needs to happen to make that a code compliant area. So there's a lot in the upgrade I kind of put inside that box. And that is what that congressionally directed spending grant would help offset. Specifically, that what's in front of Congress is not, cannot be applied to the other parts of the
So
project.
I'm gonna move for, I mean, we're out of time.
Yeah,
Unfortunately. We've got a couple more things to hit, but it sounds like you and Steve need to get together.
Yeah.
Build this list of things that have to, I mean, if we don't, then we're facing potential catastrophic issues. And then Steve and we'll have you come back and say, these are the things you can phase in and look at the practicality. I like that. I mean, that makes sense if you can start to increase your revenue stream. But how long will that take? You know, putting those things in place.
And I don't think, I'm not speaking for everyone, but like personally, I'm not against what needs to happen at the plant, but I don't think this is a feasible proposal. And I think what, if we take it as it is right now, it will get shot down. And then where are we with no upgrades to a plant that massively needs upgrades? And I feel like the phasing and whatever might be the thing that helps us get it through, because we do need this to be done. But as it stands right now, I have zero confidence.
So
that it'll go
let's
through.
move along,
Yeah.
unfortunately. So Steve,
really don't like.
Steve,
Yeah, we gotta move on. Okay, sorry, I shouldn't have said that.
I'm committing agenda items. Maybe we can move the ethics discussion to next time.
yeah, and just go to the superintendent's report. Okay.
That's okay with.
Well, I don't really, I mean,
Nothing to report?
yeah, I mean, we have some issues at the plant right now with our filter tanks. We have the two of them when we wash and switch to one for 2 weeks. When we went to switch this past week, the control panel was not working. So we're stuck right now with just one filter tank. We were able to wash that one, bring it back online, but we don't have two right now, and until we get that figured out. You know, that's the last step in the process. And if we have a major flood, we need them both running.
Be tackling that sooner than later.
Got calls out.
Okay. Good, okay. How long will the ethics review take?
12 seconds.
I can give a quick overview.
Yeah.
Sure. Where are we at? All right, so Code of Ethics, this is the state version that was finalized last year. We slightly amended it to apply to all employees and volunteers for the town. So, and the highlights is that it covers conflicts of interest and recusal from topics that are discussed before the commission. It also covers prohibited conduct such as unethical conduct, preferential treatment, misuse of your position, misuse of information, misuse of government resources, accepting gifts, making unauthorized commitments, and benefiting from contracts. It also has a section about incompatibility of offices. For instance, the town manager cannot also be a select board member. And it covers how to make a complaint of an ethics violation and enforcement process to deal with those complaints. A quick review of the training and review. The code must be reviewed by each committee in a meeting annually, and each member must sign a form acknowledging that they have read and understand the Code of Ethics. I think you've all gotten an email from Duncan Wardwell with that form. He's tracking all responses from committees and from town employees. There's also an online training that needs to be taken when you're appointed to the committee. And then once every 3 years, Duncan is also keeping a spreadsheet for tracking all of that. So if you haven't watched the video, please do. It's actually, I think, pretty informative. It gives you some good examples.
Good. Thanks, Josh.
Sure.
Bart?
I'll just say during my many hours driving back and forth to Bennington, I heard at least twice the public radio or Vermont public discussion of the ethics rules around legislators. And it was interesting. Their dynamic said one of the things they wrestle with is the desire to represent their voters or districts in a discussion versus recusal. And their recusals are, for better or worse, very rare, virtually non-existent because of that. I'm not sure I swallow that logic, but I just point out that that was their discussion on public radio.
Thank you. We need
Next meeting.
reviewing that and signing the form for the document.
Yep.
Okay, good. Next meeting.
Is next Monday, right?
That'll be,
We're having the special meeting.
it's a special meeting. Yeah, so a good reminder. Next Monday, we have a special meeting. It's at 7 PM. It's a follow-up, or it's an overview of the water line replacement project on Tilden Ridge and Cochrane. We sent a letter out today to those folks who we need easements from. So, planning to cover the project and also discuss the need for some easements for curb stops and hydrants. And then our next regular meeting will be the 21st. And I assume that we'll have a follow-up in the 20-year study. And I'm sure we'll have five or six more things that'll come along between now and then.
Mr. Chairman, move we.
This is David, I'll second.
Right, calling for a vote.
Aren't I?
Aaron, I.
David, I.
Right?
We're gonna, passes, thank you.
All right.
Griffin, thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks for all your work on this.
Thanks.